Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rick McCutcheon. I'm one of the volunteers on this committee for the Canadian National Microsoft Dynamics D365 CE CRM community. And we're having our monthly Doug meetup. And Diane, if you want to introduce yourself, you're a very important volunteer on this group as well.
Hi, everyone. I am Diane Taylor. I am a user in Saskatchewan with Synergy Credit Union and join Rick and Malcolm and Robert in co-chairing and co-organizing the group. So happy to be here and glad to see all of you.
If you would like to present, please reach out to one of the volunteer committee and we'll set things up for you. So, and if you'd like to be on the email list, I have an Outlook email that we just sent to everybody. Just put it in the chat and I will add you to our list. So FYI, we're recording today. Our meetings are automatically recorded. These records are uploaded to Public Dynamics User Group's YouTube site. These recordings are available to anyone who elects to see them. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So today's agenda, we're going to have a bit of a networking chat. We'll do our Doug intro. That's what we're doing here. So I guess we're done our chat. And configuration-driven solutions, 5 tips to unchain your Power Apps. And Matt, that's you, right?
That's me.
Okay, Matt, you want to just introduce yourself to the audience before we go any further?
Yeah, certainly. So for those that I've not met before, my name is Matt LaCasse. I am an independent consultant. I come from a software development background, and I've been a developer since 2008, but I've been focusing on Dynamics 365 and Power Platform since 2014. I'm not a professional public speaker, but I'm hoping to share a couple of tips that I've learned along the way. It's nice to be here.
Okay, thank you. And then we're going to have a debrief at the end. And I think Diane's going to run that. So anything you want to engage with or any questions, please add them to the chat. Share on your LinkedIn profile to connect with others on the call today and be part of the group and contribute questions, share your thoughts, and come off mute. We won't bite. I don't know about that, but we won't bite. All right. So I hope everyone's going to participate. So why don't we go around the room and you can quickly introduce yourselves. And we'll start with you, Will, because that's easy. You've done this before.
Sure, yeah. Put me on the spot, why don't you? So my name's Will. I'm out in Toronto. I am the lead data scientist and founder of an AI engineering firm called Right Way AI. Basically, I've been doing Azure data science for a long time and then move into more of the Power Platform space, working with AI Builder and Copilot Studio. I was named Copilot Studio MVP this year, so great to meet anyone that I haven't met before and looking forward to getting connected.
Okay, great. I'll go over to Hilda next. Do you want to introduce yourself? I guess not. Okay.
She
DK.
did say in the chat that she had to take a call, so maybe she's still on
DK.
Hey everybody, nice to see everybody over here. My name is Dinesh Kaushik and I'm a senior consultant and architect. I've been in this space for about more than 10 years now. I've been in Canada before, but now moved to Arizona. I'm one of the Arizona leaders, Doug leader. And whenever I get time, when I have the calendar open, I would like to come and just attend these Canadian meetings, the CECRM, and I love that. And looking forward to attend a few more in the future.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Jared.
Hello, my name is Jared Colbert. I'm a solution architect for the state of Tennessee, although I have a bunch of family up in Canada, which is one of the reasons I gravitated to your guys' group.
All right. Welcome, eh? Ajlan?
Hello, everyone. My name is Azra, and I'm from Mumbai. I'm a software developer. Like I've been doing software development since 2018, and then I moved to into Dynamics CRM, helping the communities and start gaining the knowledge and everything.
Okay, perfect. Nice meeting you, Arthur. Arthur, I guess you're not coming on. All right. Perfect. We've introduced ourselves. Let's carry on. So be courteous, respectful with your interactions and join
Sorry.
our group. So October 9th, we have TBD. So if you're looking to get into the spotlight and present something, please let us know. Robert Bailey's November 13th. He's going to do Copilot powered scrums. We got Ashley Steiner back doing survival tips for CRM and bins. And then we're looking for somebody for our January meeting. So please let us know, or any suggestions, people you've seen speak before. I think, so Will Hawkins, I have a session on fabric. All right. Okay, so let's maybe look at that for the January timeframe, and let's go from there. Okay, next slide. Join us in Montreal next week. So it's going to be a full day on Tuesday, the 16th. We're going to have a lot of fun. I think we've got a big crowd, 150 or something signed up for this. So it's going to be a good one. Anybody here going to be there besides Matt and myself? Okay, well, Montreal's, Phil, oh yeah, Philip, you're on, okay.
Yep.
Oh, Philip, you didn't introduce yourself. Say hello.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Phil, and the practice lead for Dynamics 365 CE at Talent Americas, which I'm coming from ThinkMax. We got acquired from by Talent, so I'm now at Talent, and I'll be there next week.
You know, you might be good to present at one of our upcoming sessions then, Philip.
Maybe. We'll see.
Okay, we'll talk to you Tuesday. Okay, excellent. So our Doug Meetup communities for Canada, here's a list of those communities. We're kind of just CE, CRM, Power Platform, but you know, the one out of Montreal is ERP based. So there's Eastern Canada and East Canada. Okay, so I think they're both BC type groups. The Vancouver is BC Power Apps, I believe. Winnipeg is a GP and Power Platform group. And then we have mentoring programs. So if you're an up and comer and looking for some mentoring help, that is available. And then we have a managers and admin session we do every month as well, more so on the administration side of implementing a project and keeping your CRM healthy. So the Doug Meetup virtual communities, the Canadian National Community is our community. There's also a very good marketing one. So the marketing professionals in your organization can join. I think they get like 400 members now. And then we talked about the mentoring and management and admin. Okay, excellent. So anything else on the slides? Want to present a topic? We've covered this. Want to hear from a specific presenter? We covered this. Want to hear something specific? Please let us know. Okay, so I think we can roll now into Matt, unless there's one other thing.
We just need to go through the Doug intro and who Doug is, but I don't see Bobby on the call.
Okay, so I can handle this. So okay. Doug is the community organizing group for these user groups. Doug user groups, founded in 1995. Mostly, I think they started out as ERP in the nav world. And now they've got 47,000 community members. So they've got quite a database, and there's a couple hundred different user communities. So you can find help for just about everything. To be part of Doug, it is free. And, you know, they sort of, you'll see sponsorship opportunities if you're an ISV or a partner who wants to sponsor events. That's how they generate their revenue. And they also have a show called DynamicsCon. I think the next one's coming up in May in, where are we going? Vegas. So I think the next show will be Vegas. I know we're in Vegas, just not sure the date right off.
My slide just went away. There we go.
Okay.
Oh, but it keeps. Sorry.
Is there another slide?
There is. There's a couple more.
Take it out of rules of engagement. be curious. Oh, be courteous. Contribute to the meeting. Let everyone participate. What are meetups? This is a meetup, and your actions matter. So local meetup is open to all members of the community, and you can also participate online. We have chats and things of that nature. Okay, what else do we have here? User group programs. Other things we have: free online open forum discussions, DynamicsCon in-person conference. Actually, I saw that it's reduced to $9.99, which is probably half of what it's going to cost at the door. If you haven't been to DynamicsCon, we did Chicago last year. There's probably a couple thousand people there. It was quite a good event. Solutions and services. Oops, too fast.
Sorry.
All right.
There you go.
So we have solutions and services for ISVs and partners, on-demand training courses, lots of free virtual content, local meetups. We talked about that, DynamicsCon, regional in-person events. So that's what we're doing next week in Montreal. We had a regional event, when was it, June? In Toronto. It was very well attended. And then, yeah, that's about it. So next. Upcoming, if you have any friends in Texas, in Dallas on the 17th, and Southeast, Northeast, and they're going to name quite a few more between now and the end of the year. So lots of activity, lots of action. And if you haven't, and these regional events are free, right? They're kind of nice because they're like a mini DynamicsCon without the price tag. So please make sure you attend. And you know, we sold out. Toronto and Montreal's pretty much sold out too. So they're a great way to meet other people and find out more about Dynamics. Register today for, there we are, May 12th to 15th, early bird price, $9.99. That's US dollars. So it's like $1,300, but still it's a good price. And you know, how often do we get to go to Vegas anymore? So if you can go there and get educated, fantastic. Oh, they're announcing this.
Yes,
Ta-da!
this is a new one coming back. Convergence is back.
Yes. So Convergence was our original show for Dynamics that was put on by Microsoft. And we did that for years, and it was a big show, like 10,000 people. This was just a rumor last week, but now we have a slide. So it's December 9th to 12th in Miami. This is going to be a great conference. So it's going to be AI and ERP. So mostly focused on Business Central and F&O, finance. I'm sure there'll be some stuff around GP and conversions and a lot of things on AI. So very interesting. Keep your eye on it. I know there's some people out there who are trying to get you know, Dataverse CRM and CE added to this and Power Apps, but this ought to be a great show. So there's the QR code, and I think I'm going to Miami on the 9th to 12th. Excellent. A surprise slide. Any other surprise slide? Here's another one. Matt LaCasse. Okay, over to you, Matt. I'll let you take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rick. And hello again, everybody. Just give me 1 second while I get all my stuff situated. I've got the presentation and notes and all that fun stuff. So let me just get that all set up. 1 moment, please. Where's that? Okay, so we're gonna share. So I do have a lot of stuff up on my screen, so I'm not going to be able to pay attention to the chat necessarily. So if there are any questions at any point during the presentation, please feel free, and I'll try to leave pauses as much as I can. But please feel free to interrupt, and we'll make sure that that your voice can be heard. So without further ado, this is Configuration-Driven Solutions, 5 ways to unchain your Power Apps. I was listening to some of the experience around the room, and holy moly, so for some of you, this might be a bit of review. I heard a lot of solution architects out there, so if you need an extra minute to check some emails or something, this might be this might be stuff that you've already heard before. This was intended for kind of an introductory level about some design patterns. So with that out of the way, let's move on. I already did the about me, so we can skip right into the session. So what are we doing here? Why are we doing this session? And let me answer that question by asking another one of you. Just by, maybe I'll have to put the teams up here, but by a show of hands, how many people have been on a project team where an app was supposed to be just for one team, and then you were asked to expand it to others, maybe, or they had slightly different requirements, but an overall kind of similar process? Yeah. See, one, for those that aren't raising your hands, I want to know where you work. Excellent. And how about this? Who's ever had to republish an app just to change an option set label or add a new stage to a business process flow? Probably a few more there as well. Yep, that pretty much checks. So let me get this out of the way here. So these are the kinds of issues that teams can face sometimes when working with apps that are a bit too rigid. So today we're going to dive into a few strategies to help reduce the amount of time that you need to spend on development and deployment. Because here's the reality. Every one of us is expected to do more with less right now. Development time is expensive. Timelines are perpetually tight, or maybe that's just me and government contracts. But timelines are always tight and clients are expecting more. So this session is my way of sharing a few patterns that can help makers and developers achieve kind of 3 key goals. Number 1, to future-proof your apps. Number 2, reduce your technical debt. And number 3, and maybe most importantly, empower users in your organization to support and extend these apps without always having to rely on the technical team and those expensive development hours. So before we dive into too much further, and maybe we can consider this kind of tip 0, is that this kind of all happens at design time before you're ever actually writing the code. And we're talking about developing fast versus developing flexible. It's understandable to build to exactly what the requirements say, and that's not necessary. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say you have a requirement that says when a record of such and such type is created, automatically create some child records with the following parameters, right? Now, the inclination may be based on experience or timeframes to just spin up Power Automate flow on a create trigger, and then you've got 2 or 3 or 4 new add row tasks, whatever the requirements say, and just implement that verbatim. Is this going to work? Absolutely. Are you going to have a functional app? Certainly. But what happens when they need more child records? What happens if they need fewer? If we build our apps too rigidly, every new business request is going to involve cracking open the app, another deployment cycle, another development cycle, overall higher costs. So for kind of tip 0 here, I think what I'd want to say is when you're evaluating your requirements, it doesn't hurt to pause and ask, what in these requirements is likely to change? Is there anything that can be externalized from the solution configuration? Is there anything that can be configured instead of hard-coded? So with that out of the way, what are configuration-driven solutions? Well, this isn't an actual sanctioned term, I don't believe. This is just something that I had to come up with because I needed a title for the session. But a configuration-driven solution is a solution where it makes sense to, your business logic lives in your data, not in your formulas. And when I'm referring to formulas, I'm talking about things like if you have Power Automate flows, logic apps, you have plugin code, JavaScript code, anywhere where there's kind of business logic decisions being made in a hard-coded fashion. By switching to a configuration-driven approach, the result of which is that areas of your app behavior become controlled by settings, by data. And when the functionality of your app is being controlled by data, the process to change application configuration in your dev test UAT production environment can become more simple and a lot more agile. It allows you to respond to your changing business needs more rapidly and empower your business users to take charge of areas of their business that may have those constantly evolving needs. So what does that look like? So we're going to hop aboard our train to the land of make-believe here. We're going to pretend that we are on a development team. So our team has been tasked with building a Power App to manage new hardware requests. We have some fairly straightforward requirements that we have to accomplish. Our request has to move through some different stages. Certain stages require approvals. The stages can't be moved if there's a pending approval, and our email notification needs to be sent out when an approval is assigned. So with that in mind, we went ahead and we developed our app. You guys are quick, it's already done, I can't believe it. And let's take a look at what that looks like. So let me switch my screen here, I'm gonna end that. And we're going to go over to our hardware requests. So a few areas. So we had our 4 key requirements for the stages. We decided to go with the business process flow because it's an out-of-box component. It provides a nice user interface for displaying where we are in the process, and it also gives us our stage conditions to be able to restrict when something moves. The approvals have to be, so we've got our, oh, why don't I have my approvals here? Did I not refresh? There we go. So our approvals have to be generated when the request is created. So we have a Power Automate flow that goes through and creates a couple of approvals. And I don't have my email up, but an email notification was received when I got these. And to manage the requirement that we had to have an approval finished before we move on from a stage, we added a couple fields to this record that get populated when the associated approval is done. So I can move through my stages. We've met all our requirements. It's very straightforward kind of flow. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because that's not the point to go through a fake hardware request, but you get the idea. So let's talk a little bit about, so this was developed very quickly, and let's talk about some of the design choices that could have been made here. So number 1 is the use of a business process flow. So it does provide a very easy, usable, out-of-the-box experience for managing stages, but anytime that we have to change our flow, it involves a solution deployment. So there's a bit of rigidity in that. Same thing with our need to manage stage approvals. Before moving to a new stage, we have our fields here, but if I needed to add, let's say, another approval for this stage, that involves an update to the application. So for our approval generation as well, let's just take a quick look into that Power Automate flow. And that's in this one here. So again, we were prioritizing speed over configurability. And when our request is created, we just have a couple of tasks in our flow that are adding records for those approvals. But again, if there was something that if we needed to add another one, again, we're cracking open the app. And then the last one was for our notifications. We have a task in here. Is this the right one? Send email notification. Where we've got a task that's sending an email, but we, because this was developed maybe in just the one environment, somebody went ahead and just left this pesky hard-coded email address in here too. So while we have a fully functional app, there's certainly a lot of room for improvement. So how can we improve on that? Before I move on, though, I just want to pause and see if there's any questions. All right, moving right along then. So from there, we've done our demo. And so now we can get into some tips, and we're going to start to make this look a little bit better. So tip number 1 is to evaluate areas in your app to shift business logic into your data layer. So the idea here is, this is the foundational tip on top of which all the other tips are going to be built. The idea is to migrate identified areas of your solution configuration and move them into your data layer. And this shift supports deployment-free application maintenance, configuration auditability, so it allows, if your configuration isn't data, it does allow you to audit it, and empowers non-developers to manage settings. So configurations like this can live in dedicated tables, in columns of existing tables. So for example, if you had functionality that you wanted to enable or disable based on a user or team, you could add to user and team tables. The sky is the limit, right? So some examples of what this might look like would be if you have an application that is responsible for employee onboarding, you may have different departments that have different steps that they need to accomplish, and we may be able to parameterize that and put it into data. If you have an app managing time off request rules, perhaps there's regional differences in accrual, blackout dates, et cetera. And then if you have an application that's responsible for selling products or services, applying dynamic pricing based on customer size. So this some examples outside of what we're working with our request app there. So what does this look like in our request app? We've seen the old configuration. How can we make that a bit better? So the first thing to do would be to create a type table, request type, to store the configuration for each type of our requests. As children of that table, we're going to add records to manage the stages. So we can decouple that from a static component. We're going to add approval templates and link them to a request type, our request type stage. And then instead of having hard-coded logic as the application is evaluating these, we're going to change it so that it is looking to this configuration instead of having our hard-coded. So what does this look like for us? So let me get rid of that Teams thing here. So this is our old app here, and now we're into our new app. And instead of having hardware requests, we just have a request table. Sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge to get get business users on board because oftentimes they are tied to their system terminology. One strategy I've had when trying to approach projects like this is to have that line of demarcation between what is system terminology and what is business terminology, and that has been a successful approach in the past. So we have already gone ahead and created our request type table to start to manage this. And we're going to get rid of that because we're going to recreate it later. That should not have been there. So in our request type, we obviously have to have a name, so we're specifying that. And then our first piece of business logic that we're putting into our data layer is the assignment. So when this is created, we can now configure whether or not it's going to be assigned to a user or a team, and then who that's going to be. You will notice that all the assignments are to me in this demonstration because I'm the only person at my company. So, and then for the stages, so whereas before we were using our business process flow, we now have a subgrid that allows us to specify a stage and a stage order. And this can now be updated in our data layer. So if there's any changes that need to happen here, if we need to introduce a stage or somebody found a spelling mistake, it's no longer an app deployment. This can be done right from the configuration. And same thing with our approvals. So we have got, instead of our hard-coded Power Automate application with our 2 static rows, we now have a table that holds the configuration for our approvals, and the Power Automate flow will instead check the configuration of the request type when the request is created and create those. So how does this look when we are talking about our users using this? Well, let's go ahead and create a new request. So I need 1,000 laptops. We're a big team. So our request type is going to be hardware request. I'll just fill some of this information in here. Request date, we need these in 2 weeks. So they can do 1,000 laptops in 2 weeks, that's fine. So while we're, so we've got a couple of flows running in the background while this is happening. So for the stages, our Power Automate flow is now looking at a request type stage from the subgrid on our request type entry. It's looking for the stage with order number 1. And once it's found it, it's going to populate our stage. And now you can see that we've got our, that's populated and we can see where we are in the stage. I have a little bit of a guilty admission here. This PCF control was developed by GitHub Copilot. It was a lot of fun to get to know that process. And if you have any questions about that later on, I'm certainly happy to entertain. But yeah, so we've so as far as our original requirements are concerned, we've now been able to meet that with something that's configurable. For our approvals, again, our Power Automate flow is run, grab the configuration, and it has gone through and created those for us there. So if we look at the two kind of back and forth, they look very similar. Everything's pretty much the same, except where we have a very rigid and hard-coded one here, we have something that is immediately flexible and a lot easier to maintain. So then the benefit of this too is, so let's say that the software team has got wind of what you've got going on and say, yeah, we'd like to use this too. It is trivial to go through and spin up a new request type. take a couple of minutes. And let's say this is going to be for me. There we go. While I'm going through this part, I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions. Nothing. Okay, that's all right. Again, if there's anything that comes up, if it comes to mind while I'm speaking, please don't hesitate to interrupt. So for this one, I want my review stage, same as the hardware one. We're going to give that order number 1. Let's say we still want a manager approval because there may be licensing. Oh, manager approval. So we're going to add that as stage number 2. Let's say we have a licensing stage. That's going to be for, I think I've created that. Yes, I have. And that's going to be number 3. And then that's going to be, and then we'll do one more just for completion. There we go. And that's going to be number 4. All right. So we've already been able to spin up one with our stages, and let's add a couple of approvals as well. So we're still going to have our manager review or manager approval for a manager role, and we're going to assign, I'm also the manager here. And let's say we need one for the licensing purchase approval as well. So that's in our licensing stage. And that is for an IT manager that I am also. All right, so in a matter of minutes, we were able to create a whole new request type. And now if I were to go through and so I need Office 98 is the one I've been using. Oh, that is a software request by myself. If I was a better developer, I would have populated this automatically based on who was logged in, but you know. And there we go. So as you can see now, our control has gone and grabbed the new configuration from the request type instead of using the hard-coded one. And if we give this a moment, our different licensing approval has been created as well. So to summarize this, again, this is a foundational kind of tip for of the 5 tips is by moving some of your business logic into your data layer, it does allow you to quickly and easily adjust to your changing business needs. And then we're going to expand on that. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, so let's go back into our presentation and look at tip number 2. So tip number 2 is to use feature flags to control functionality. So feature flag is a simple true or false value stored somewhere in your data. What it allows is for you to turn functionality on or off like a light switch without actually modifying the app itself. So when you're going through the development phase, conditional logic gets added to your components to check for these flags and then react accordingly. So when you're going through requirements review, it's helpful to take a look for things that say, as an example, like users in this group can do this, but not this group, or for this record type, do this. Anywhere where there's a clear divide between where functionality will be required and where it might not. So the benefit here, obviously, is that based on your business needs, you can decide which features to enable depending on the user, the environment, the group, their environment, or the rollout strategy. So in our request app example, we'll look at a couple of cases. One being, let's say that somebody in the hardware team has been messing around and flipping stages willy-nilly, so they want to have the ability to disable navigation in the business process flow stages. And then if a user group or one of the onboarded teams with the request type has a high volume of requests that are coming through and they're getting inundated with emails, they say, we don't want to receive emails anymore for our request types. So what would that look like? Now, again, I know there's a lot of experience in this room here, so this might be a lot of review, but again, you never know if somebody's kind of in their first, their beginning stages here, so I will walk through kind of what that looks like. So for the feature flag, so if we go back to our request type, we have got on our stages here, we've got a flag here that says enable BPF navigation. So if I were to set this to no, and then if we save that, our PCF control that we saw on our request has been configured to actually look for that field. It's a configurable, so I provided the field name that it needs to look for that. And based on the value, we can no longer do that. And then likewise, if I wanted to go and turn that back on and go back to my request, in a hardware request, I can see my navigation buttons are back, and I can indeed again move through here. So that's one example. And then the other one would be for being able to disable notifications across the board. So in my approvals tab here, I have a flag that says send approval assignment notifications. So in my Power Automate flow that's responsible for sending those, if we go in there, so this is our request approval, that's the one. And if I look at my configuration, whereas before it was just a straight shot saying, when it's created, send the email. We now have a condition statement here before we have that. So our request approval is being created. We are grabbing the associated request type. And then based on that, we're checking for this send approval assignment notifications flag that we saw in the form. And all these conditions would then need to be true before we're sending this out. So that is, that's feature flags in a nutshell. Again, I will pause if there are any questions. Moving right along. We already did that. Okay. So on to tip number 3 would be environment level configuration. So time for a quick story. I remember there was one point I was tasked on managing a Canvas app that was already been deployed across an organization. I remember being so excited learning that when I started looking around in there, because it was very cleanly built, the PowerFX code was nice, it was well documented, good comments, the flows were neat, tidy, they had proper error handling, it was beautiful, but it had one significant kind of drawback, and that is that it was developed in the default environment. So when it came time to do upgrades, we moved the app into a separate environment so we could start testing and validating some new changes. And then we discovered that when it was built, despite all the best practices that were done for some components, everything was hard-coded. And it led me I believe it was something that started off as something small and then just kind of blew up into a bigger app, as tends to happen when people see fun new functionality. So I think the moral of the story here is, while we're talking about environment level configurations, if you are working on an app, even if it's something small, it can always become something bigger. And taking the right steps at the beginning of your application development journey can help make sure the app is ready to scale into more mature ALM processes. So story time out of the way, this 1 second. On to our environment level configurations. So your app should absolutely be behaving differently in dev, test, and production. What do I mean by that? If you have a developer Power Apps environment, you're probably going to have a developer SharePoint environment, or at least a separate like list or library that you're working with. And you do need to be able to configure those in such a way that your development stuff isn't touching your production stuff. So the approach here is that to use environment level settings to adapt our behaviors, and in the case of my old app, the connections, based on what the current environment is. So we're going to centralize these settings into our environment variables, and this allows for a much more peaceful development experience, preventing mistakes like accidentally sending emails from official addresses. That one hits home. Don't ask me why. So again, some examples of things that we may want to configure on an environment by environment basis are your SharePoint sites, reference lists in Power Automate flows or in Canvas apps, notification email addresses, things like environment level feature flags, which we're going to take a look at here to prevent spamming your, especially if you're on the development side, your coworkers with a bunch of emails when you're testing 100 new different records that all send emails out. And then, of course, things like your external API URLs. So in our case here, what we're going to do is create a couple of environment variables for this application. One is going to hold the notification shared email mailbox address, And then the other one is going to be a general flag to enable notifications in your environment. So again, what does this look like? We'll jump back into the app. So in my solution, again, there may be people who have not worked with this before. So just as a quick review, environment variables do allow you to, they are solution aware, they get moved along, and they allow you to have configuration available within the solution here. So I've created two right now. One is of a yes/no data type for whether or not we're enabling email notifications. Again, if you've never seen, the default value is the one that will always be applied unless there's something in the current value. And then it's also important to pay attention to this flag down here about exporting a value. If this is set to yes, then whatever is in your current value will become part of your solution and it will be applied on the other side. So I don't know why that's on here, but this is a demo app, so it doesn't really matter. So in this case, we have turned off notifications. This is set to no. And then we've also got our notification email box. So our default value again, so where's, in this case, they're the same, but as we move through our environments, we can change this into one that's more appropriate if you want notifications that are environment aware. So you may have a UAT mailbox, a test mailbox, and just a prod mailbox as well. One other thing on environment variables before we move on too much, if you've never created one before, in here you have the option for environment variable. And when it comes to things like your SharePoint lists and sites and stuff, there's actually a data type in here called data source. If you select that, you can pick from SharePoint Server, SQL Server, Dataverse as well, if you are using flows that are not for the default environment. And then if you're, in the case of SharePoint, you can actually specify a site or a list. And then when you're working with those connections inside of Power Automate Flow, it will pick up on those as part of your dynamic content and you can add those in. So to close this out, as far as applying these, so again, we've got our notification flow here. Let's open that up. So we have our condition statement. Excuse me. We've seen this before when we were looking at our request level feature flag, but we also, as one of the conditions here, have a check for this environment level one. So again, all of these conditions have to be evaluated as true before you can move on to sending an email. And then in our from field here, if I were to go to dynamic content, I can see that my environment variable is available, and that's what we have chosen instead of the hard-coded value. I will pause again if there are any questions.
Yeah, Matt, just a quick kind of random question. Can solutions that are built in Power Apps be uploaded or versioned through Azure DevOps?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the topic of another talk that I'm trying to put together too.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, definitely. We can chat offline if you want about that. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so let me go back to our slideshow here. So we're making good time. That is our environment aware configurations. Let's move on to our next tip. So tip number 4, and this is one of my favorite ones, is configurable business rules. What is considered required today may be optional tomorrow. So if you recall in the old application, there's certain out-of-box components that don't lend themselves very well to flexibility. The business process flow being one because it requires a change, and then business rules are another. So it is a challenge when you're trying to make something flexible, like how do you handle these rules that without being able to use an out-of-box component? One way that I've seen before in work that I've done is I remember opening up one table and seeing a 1,500-line JavaScript that was all if-else statements with show-hide statements. Show this field, make this one required. So that's certainly a way to do it, but there are better ways. So yeah, the big challenge with business rules is because we don't always know what our evaluation parameters are going to be at build time. Using those out-of-box functionalities are not always possible. So how can we do this? Well, if you're sensing a theme here, we move that configuration into our data layer. So if we, how can we do this? In our request app, we need to be able to dynamically show and hide fields based on a request type, and then possibly make fields required or optional based on request type. So these are going to vary between our hardware and software requests. How can we go about doing this? So the solution that I just as an aside here, like this is anything that I'm showing here, this is not the way to do these things. This is a way to do these things. These are not always going to be universally applicable, but I think the idea here is more just to plant the seed. But with that disclaimer out of the way, what we can do is create a business rule table that has a few fields in it, like what is the field name, what is the rule type, what is the value. We could tie a request type to it as well, and then be able to identify some conditions that go along with that, such as whether or not a value of a certain field is whatever you need to evaluate it against. So again, what does this look like for us? So if we go back into our application, in our administration table here, we've created a table called custom business rules. If we pop this open, so we've got our table name. So this is going to be used, the way that these are evaluated is by a singular JavaScript file that gets loaded onto any form that requires these. It's going to filter which rules it needs to look at by what is in the table name here. The column name is the column against which the rules should apply. And we're starting off very simple here. So this is just for visibility and required business rules. So we can pick either one. Whatever's in the value corresponds to here. So if this is visible false, we're going to hide it. If it's visible true, we're going to show it. Same thing with required. This is required. This is optional. And then I've added a flag to also invert if the conditions are not met, because I don't know how many people have had, I wish they had that feature in the out-of-box ones, but anywho. And then we have our conditions table down here as well. So tied to our business rule. So we've got a field name. So in this case, this condition type is we're checking the value of a field. We have a few comparison operators, so we can say equal, not equal, null, not null, greater than and less than, just to start. And then a value. In this case, we're looking for, this is a lookup field, so we're looking for the GUID. And a comment, because I don't know about you, but I don't remember what things are by their GUIDs. So having a comment in here to explain what that is definitely helpful. So with all of that in place, what you can end up doing, let's go back to our request table, and that was on the hardware request. So actually, I'm going to duplicate this so we can jump back and forth real quick. Administration, request types, that was, nope, custom business rules, that's where we are. So right now I have it as required equals false. So as we can see, hardware request, it is false. If I wanted that to be required, it would just be a simple matter of coming in, updating that. Then if we refresh, we can see it is now a required field. Same thing with the visibility. If we wanted to make this, if we want to hide this for whatever reason for a hardware request, simple matter of coming in, update the rule. Oh, you're going to make me do a hard refresh because it's required. And now we see that it's disappeared. Now, as far as the actual application of that, like I said, there is a piece of JavaScript, and I'm happy to share both the code for the PCF control and the JavaScript that we're using for this. I can put it up into GitHub at some point when I have a moment. But for those that are curious, and again, in case you're just ramping up in your Power Platform career, you can add JavaScript to a form when you're in your form editor by coming to this little JS tab. And so I just have a library here called custom business rules. And then on my onload handler, I've got two functions that I'm calling from there. The first one here is the method that actually goes and queries the business rule table, gets all the ones that are related to this table, and evaluates all the conditions and applies the rules. And then the second one is to dynamically add on change handlers to the fields that exist in the conditions table, because if not, if there were to be a real-time change in there, we wouldn't actually have that business rule being evaluated. And being able to, so we needed a way to do that dynamically at runtime because we don't know at build time what configuration we're going to have in there. So that is custom business rules in a nutshell. Again, I will pause if there are any questions.
Yeah, Matt, I've got a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, absolutely.
Right. Okay. But so I built a similar kind of I will call it an accelerator, but I had many plugins, JavaScripts, and other configurations running in there based on certain conditions. But I figured it out that it was too slow for me. It used to take a lot of time, interdependencies on the one value to another value. So how do you think we can maybe if you have an idea from your experience, can be these things can be optimized?
Oh, that is a good question. That is a loaded question too. I mean, just generally speaking, as far as and we're getting pretty technical here, but like as far as when you're in your JavaScript files, just it's the basic things like making sure that you're optimizing your queries enough. Like in the case of where we're querying for the custom business rules and the child conditions, bundling it into a query with an extension, as opposed to doing two separate ones is one way. With the plugins, it's the same thing. I find that that's oftentimes where the performance issues happen is when there's a lot of external requests going out, because oftentimes code execution doesn't take a whole lot of time. It says external asynchronous things that are happening. So I'm happy to, if you want to connect afterwards, I'm happy to maybe deep dive into the specific situation. But that's all I can think of off the top of my head.
No problem. Last one. Would you recommend how many tables, configurations should be used? Like I know you have 12 tables already in there. Do you have any suggestions, or it just depends on your scenario or your logic?
Much more towards the latter. It's going to depend on the complexity of your application. I mean, out of here, I've got I do have a lot of configuration tables. But it really depends on it really depends on the scenario. If you're looking to only externalize a little bit of your business logic into data, you could absolutely use existing tables. I think it really depends.
Okay, that answers my question. Yeah, and I'm happy to connect with you later.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. All right, so let's go back. So that was configurable business rules. We're almost done. I think I'm trying to keep this at 45 minutes, and I think I'm almost on the mark, which is just awesome. So the last tip in this here is the delegation of configuration ownership and security considerations. So at this point, we've gone through a lot of work to get this app to be configurable, right? The last consideration that we need to think of is how do we manage access to these records so we don't have users coming in and breaking stuff for us, right? As a great man once said, with great power comes great responsibility. So for this tip, the first thing we want to do is identify kind of which configuration areas business users can safely manage versus things that might want to deal with more on the IT side, right? And again, this is going to depend on how the app is built and any processes and guardrails that you might have in place. This would have to be a conversation between IT and the business users to find out what would work best for everybody. And even in configuration, so even in this kind of situation, there's probably areas that IT is still going to want to manage. The environment variables, for example, would be a good one that I think should remain in the purview of IT and development. So once these conversations have taken place, though, creating a security model around that to allow information or access to these records as needed. It allows certain people to be able to maintain this, people that know what they're doing, versus some users who may not be as well aware of the configuration of the system, right? So in our app, it would probably be a good idea to have our business users maintaining things like our request types, the stages and approvals probably. But on the IT side, maybe we're going to want to have the business rule, the custom business rules, because it involves a little bit more advanced knowledge, and our environment configurations as well should be in the purview of IT. So how does this work? I mean, and this is, again, a very open-ended kind of question. It really depends on what security model is in place for your specific app. But generally speaking, using a combination of security roles and teams, maybe business units, however it fits with however it aligns with your structure, you use that to then grant access to the read-write access where appropriate. And I think it's important to say too, when you go down this path of having so much being configurable, one of the steps that gets missed quite often is making sure that you're updating things like your basic user roles or any of the, just ensuring that everybody in the organization that's going to rely on these configurations for app behavior has at least read access to these, or else you're going to start getting complaints about not being able to see things or getting script errors or whatever have you. So again, it's very specific to how things have been implemented, but generally speaking, coming up with a good strategy and maintaining access to these where there should be is the last tip. And on that, that is 5 tips, and we are done. So if you have any questions, I am happy to field anything else. And I'm going to stop this. I just want to say thank you again. Again, this is the first time I've ever run this session, so I appreciate you all being my guinea pigs, and I'm absolutely would love to hear any feedback you have about it, what you liked, what you didn't like. Yeah, and that's pretty much it.
How can we reach out to you, Matt? That's what my next question was.
I will throw my LinkedIn in the chat.
All right.
Yes, thanks so much, Matt. Lots of comments coming in with thanks and how great this session was. So it'll be great next week too, I'm sure. And you know, for me, one of the biggest things was right at the start is asking that question: developing fast versus flexible. And I think it's a great thing to keep top of mind as we move through and we're developing is, do we need to do this quick or do we need to do it right? And so thank you for that. That was really good.
Oh, it's my pleasure. No, I'm happy to do it.
Is there questions from anyone else? Comments? Yes, Ashlyn.
Yeah, I have a question, Mark. Mark, since you said try to move most of this business logics and everything to the data, my only question is that let's suppose if we take an example of a huge organization where they are managing multiple records and multiple tables, we are more of focusing on the business logics purely on the data side. So how can we manage all the data between the environments? Like for example, if we are creating the records in dev environments and moving all those changes to UAT and then prod, so it's kind of a messy things. Just wanted to
Absolutely, that is an absolutely great question. And when I went through this, I had to cut something for time, and that was the part that I cut out was migration strategies. And there's absolutely a few things that you can do in that regard. It's going to depend on kind of where your team is in their maturity and like what the capabilities are. It could be something as simple as, so there's a great tool in XRM Toolbox called let me pull it up here. I can't remember the name. The Data Transporter tool by Bram Colpert at C Partners. It's one that I use very often. It's if you need to quickly move something between environments like dev and test, it's a really good way. It allows you to query, add filter queries when you're looking at the data in your source environment to be applied to your target environment. But for a long-term strategy and for to ensure that this is being applied consistently, there are certainly a couple of methods that I've seen to be able to do it within, let's say, an Azure DevOps build. There are tasks to be able to use the configuration migration tool. I've seen that done. Another way that I've seen done is basically a custom build task to export and store your configuration records as JSON. So it would read that configuration, transform it to JSON, and the beauty of that is then your solution, your configuration becomes part of your source control, and you get the same traceability and visibility into the changes that way. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. It's going to almost be a topic all on its own, but a really great question.
Thank you so much for the man.
Problem. Excellent.
Good stuff. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat. So again, Matt, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us. And thanks everyone for joining us. Next month is October 9th. And thanks to Will for offering today. We'll work out all the details, but we'll see you back here on October 9th. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Matt.
Bye.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
cheers.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Al. Have a great day. Bye-bye.